Okay, there we go. Now we have audio. We are now live. Welcome everybody for what is a incredibly special broadcast today with Wes Johnson here as always with me, and live on the phone right now we have the one, the only, the Scream Queen, Adrienne Barbeau, joining us for the Alzheimer's Association fundraiser today. Before we dive in with her, and we have a lot of exciting ground to cover, we've raised $12,602.02 so far in the 13 days here that the community has been really rocking it out. Exceptionally well done. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. To donate any amount at all, $1, $5, anything you can spare really matters in this disease. So hit !charity in stream to donate. And also you can hit ! giveaways for noblechairs. They're giving away a gaming chairs to support the cause. So feel free to enter that as well. So we are joined today by iconic American actress, singer, and author of 3 books, Adrienne Barbeau, known for such films as The Fog, Escape from New York, Creepshow. She's seen on TV as a recurring character on Maude alongside the iconic B. Arthur, to more recently HBO's hit show Carnival as Ruthie. We're just really, truly honored to have you with us, Adrienne.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here, hoping this will help.
Well, it does. And we were talking before we came on about how everybody's been touched by Alzheimer's. A lot of the people who are following us and listening right now have been. I know I have been, and Ken and you. And it's good to have a chance to fight back and to get donations, to be up over 12,000 so far and be able to continue to do this, to drop the gloves against this disease throughout the month of May and do it, fun for funds. And that's what we're here to talk about today, is the fun. And your career has been so wide and varied. It's just astonishing. I mean, you've gone from Broadway to television to film. You do voice acting. You're a writer. Is there anything, Adrienne, that you don't do?
Several years ago, someone asked me that, and I said, well, the only thing I've never done is a circus act. And then I got hired to play Pippin's grandmother in Pippin, and I was hanging from a trapeze 15 feet in the air, singing my song upside down. So that's
was that ever on your bucket list, to be singing upside down on a trapeze?
Actually, I started my career early on after I did. My first Broadway show was Fiddler, but right after I did Fiddler, I did a nudie musical, which in those days was sort of de rigueur,
Yeah.
And I ended up singing upside down on a raked bed.
Oh no!
In the nude.
What I love is you. I read your book, which is amazing. The worst thing I could do. It's such a wonderful book, and talking about how that you had to write your mother to tell her about this show. Yes. This is not one you invite the parents to?
Well, Mom, I just got a new show. It's off Broadway. It's blah, blah, blah. I'm going to be nude. It's off Broadway. Won't you be taking a cut in salary?
That's where she went immediately.
That is amazing.
You'd think they'd give you a little more money, being that you're saving on wardrobe, right?
Yeah, right. But, it was, those were the days. I had gone into Fiddler as a replacement. The show had been running for like 4 years. And so I had never, pardon the pun, I had never been seen, by the agents and producers and casting directors who needed to see an actor so that they would know that they wanted to hire her for something else. And
so they come out to shows when they're fresh and when they're new, and you've got original cast. That's when they come out.
And this job came along, and I was starring, and I was singing 13 musical numbers, and so I sort of had to do it, and it led to other things. It led to Grease.
Yeah,
iconic Grease role for you.
Let me ask you one question about that play before we move on to Grease, and that is, at what point do you suddenly become comfortable with just being in the all together on stage, or do you ever become comfortable with that?
You know, I was raised in a family. There were just women in my family, my mom and my sister and myself. And I'd been in the theater since I was 15. So there's not a lot of modesty, certainly backstage in the theater. And I don't remember. It was at the time when I know that they had just started doing, what was the famous
Oh,
one that
Calcutta. Oh,
Calcutta, Bill
Calcutta,
Macy's
yeah.
father on Maude was in. And they talked about all these exercises they did and, to get comfortable and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I just got up there and did it.
Now, one other question. Was it a drafty theater?
It was the summertime.
Mm.
I don't remember it being drafty. And then just a little, what do they call it? A tidbit. It's the first dramatic television show I did was a Quincy.
Yeah.
And I played a rape crisis counselor. And the fellow who committed the rape was my co-star in Stag Movie.
Oh my God.
So you were able to visualize pretty well at this point what you were going against.
Well, I never thought of that. That's the first time I've ever thought of that. It was just such a surprise to see him. There we were. I don't know how many years later it was, and showed up together on screen.
I almost didn't recognize you with your pants on.
I don't think I had any scenes with him. I don't. He was raping Kim Cattrall. It was her first TV show.
Oh, Kim Cattrall. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Anyway, on to
And
the
that
next.
was you're working with so many people at the beginnings of their careers. I mean, you start doing Grease, and you're working with Barry Bostwick and people of that nature.
Yes.
And
Walter
camaraderie.
Bobby.
Yeah.
Yes, and we have remained very, very close friends right to this day. In fact, you said I had written 3 books. I've actually written 4 books, and I co-wrote and edited a book that we released last summer for the 50th anniversary of Grease, called Grease, Tell Me More, Tell Me More. And it's a collection of stories from every actor that ever did the show on Broadway or in the touring companies. John Travolta, Patrick Swayze, Richard Gere, Mary Lou Henner, Barry, of course, Barry Bostwick, and Alan Paul from Manhattan Transfer. And it's sort of, it's just a delightful, really appeals to anybody who loved Grease, but also to anybody who's interested in the theater, because all the actors are talking about their auditions and getting thrown out of the theater for something and what was going on backstage. And so, yeah, all of those people have remained very, very close.
And you had to grind to even get to that point, right? I mean, you did audition after audition. You had to go working as waiters in places that turned out to be, basically mob-owned, things of that sort, in order to get to where you could finally make your name.
Yes. Well, if you want to be an actor in New York, you have to have your days free, because you have to go to auditions and you have to go to classes and to study singing and all of that. So everybody takes a job at night. And I ended up working for Matty the Horse, Ionello.
But you didn't know, that's what they were at first, right? You weren't aware.
I didn't know that was his last name. It was just Matty, or Matty the Horse. I did think that there was something unique in the fact that when I asked him where I could buy a stereo, he said, "Oh, just follow that guy in that cab, and when he parks, you get out, and he'll hand you one." And it was like, oh, okay.
I see. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's even more convenient than Amazon these days.
But yeah, they were they were very good to us. They treated us really well. I was working as a waitress, and then ended up probably, I've been told, we were the first discotheque dancers in New York,
Oh,
because
wow.
Matty had this. He had a stage in the restaurant, and he had these motorized mannequins
Sort of like
dressed up
Chuck E.
like musicians.
Cheese.
Well, sort of like Chuck E. Cheese. They were all musicians, you know. The drummer drummed, and the piano player plunked on the keys. They were all mannequins, and he played the jukebox.
Wow.
And people would come in, they think there was a live band, and they, you know, pay their money, probably $1 for a Budweiser, and turn around to listen to the live band, and it was these dummies. So Maddie, in order to keep the audience calm and not angry, told us girls to get up on stage and start dancing. And I have been told by someone who was working there at the time, who later went on to write a book about it, that was sort of the beginning of disco dancing. I don't know, but
It organically came around, and you started an entire trend.
yeah,
Phenomenon. Yeah.
in long sleeve black leotards with black, you know, fit tights, and I quit when they went topless.
Well, so one thing I found very interesting reading the book is that early on, as you're going through all this and you're dealing with these people who are mob, but they're treating you so kindly and so nice, and you're remaining fairly sweet and innocent throughout. You've played so many tough, streetwise characters throughout your career, but you started off in a lot of this stuff as fairly sweet and naive.
Well, I mean, even Fiddler, you know, my first Broadway show, I had done a lot of stuff up until then, but not in New York. I played the second daughter, who was the one who stood up to her father and went off to Siberia with her boyfriend.
Yeah.
I have always, listen, I come from a line of strong women. My grandmother came over right before the pogrom in Armenia, when the Turks, you know, massacred 800,000 Armenians, or depending upon the number you read. But my grandmother came over. All of my aunts, my mother they were just survivors, and they were strong women. My mother was a very independent woman who, you know, supported her two girls all our lives, and so that's all I knew, I guess. You know.
Well, I mean, Armenian. I
didn't
remember.
know victim.
Well, no, you've basically been a survivor. I think that's very evident. But also, there's a toughness involved in that. And I remember Dan Aykroyd used to refer to John Belushi as Armenian oak, but physically he was tough and nothing could get through to him. But it seems that you've had to have that Armenian oak yourself, just to, you know, emotionally protect yourself in a lot of situations throughout your life and throughout your career, and to keep moving forward.
I don't know if I'm an optimistic person, and I don't dwell on the past, unfortunately for my children, because I never can remember anything. You know, when they, you know, Mom, well, you know, remember when we went to, was I there? You know? I don't dwell on the past, but, you know, I don't know. I just did what had to be done.
Yeah, but you still ran into people all along the way that you had to overcome, like even with Grease. Even though you were nominated for a Tony Award, you still had to deal with the powers that be, who everywhere, every step along the way, kept sort of pushing you guys back. Oh, you may get a nomination here or there, but then the powers that be say, for some reason or another, they keep wanting to quash that down. They did that with Maude as well, with the Emmys.
Yes. Well, I think the reason it happened with the Emmys is because very early on, there was a big formal event. The Writers Guild were presenting Norman Lear and his partner Bud Yorkin with some awards. And unfortunately, my dear Bill Macy had a little bit to drink, And he got up on stage and said a few things that should not have been said in those days. Now, nowadays they don't even bleep it on the news. And the Writers Guild, I mean, everybody was just up in arms. And, had he broken his morals clause and all of this and all of that.
You're telling me he started to unzip a little bit while he was up there in the book?
Yes.
You can take the boy out of O Calcutta, but you can't take the O Calcutta out of the boy.
It was his idea of humor. And I think it stemmed from that, you're never going to win. I believe Bea eventually did win an Emmy for her work in
and
one
well
of the
deserved,
shows.
yeah.
Yeah. But the show never, I don't even know if we were nominated. I don't know. I don't remember.
You got into Maude basically because Norman Lear had heard about you in Grease.
Yes, his casting director had come to see it, and I guess they had seen quite a few young women in LA. And he flew out to New York to meet with me. But they had already done the pilot. It was an episode of All in the Family. And Maude had been established. Maude's daughter had already been established, had been played by another actress, quite a great actress, who didn't want to do the pilot. Didn't want to do the series. She didn't want to move to LA, or for whatever reason, they were having to replace her. And she, in the show, had a 7-year-old son. And Norman came and we met, and, I never heard anything, and then my agent called and said, well, they think you don't look old enough to have a 7-year-old son. I said, okay, that's it.
That's nice.
And then about 4 weeks later, they called and asked me to fly to LA because they hadn't been able to find anybody. And I auditioned for them in LA, and they hired me.
You just drop everything and head to LA?
I was so fortunate in that my producers, Ken Waisman and Maxine Fox, agreed to let me go for the audition. And my understudy, Joy Rinaldi, said, I'll take over. I can do the role. Don't worry about it. Go. And I think I missed 2 performances for the audition. But we were on an equity contract, and it was a 2-week out. We weren't on, I didn't have to, I just gave them 2 weeks notice, and I moved to LA.
Is that a big move for you? I mean, you've been in New York.
Well, took an apartment on a month-to-month basis because who knew if the show was going to be a success, I kept my apartment in New York.
Right. What was the difference between life as an actor in New York and in California?
It was totally different because I was fully employed for the last 4 years I was in New York, too, so I wasn't having to struggle or make rounds or anything. But, it was just totally different. First place, you didn't go to work at night, which I loved.
Yeah.
But doing the show was similar to we shot the show like a half-hour play. We didn't shoot it in increments, just close-ups. And we brought an audience in, and we had rehearsed for 4.5 days, and we just did it. And if if somebody screwed up, we just kept going. And then we did it again for a second audience later in the evening. And they fixed they did pickups is what it's called. They fixed anything that needed to be fixed. And so that was similar, but lifestyle. But I was born and raised in California. So I had never been to LA. I had never lived in LA. I didn't know LA, but I certainly knew California lifestyle, and I knew how to drive.
Which many New Yorkers did not know how to do.
Exactly. So I don't. It wasn't
10 years.
It wasn't a huge change.
that's 10 years of straight solid employment for you then, from Grease through Maude, with not having to worry about things. Do you get comfortable with that, or do you worry that maybe that might end?
No, well, actually, I started in Fiddler in '68,
Okay.
and Maude went off the air in '78, right? '72 to '78.
I think that was
But
right.
by that time, and throughout the time I was doing Maude, I did a lot of other television films and miniseries and guest appearances on, The Love Boat and
Yeah, The
all
Love
of those
Boat.
things, and movies of the week. But when I finished Maude, my film career opened up right almost immediately. I mean, I guess we finished Maude maybe in, I don't know, April or May, and I did my first, I don't know what I did in between Maude and my first feature, but I did my first feature at the beginning of the next year. And then it was pretty consistent until I had my son, Cody, at which point I said, okay, I can't do this. I'm not going to do this. His dad and I separated almost right after he was born. And so I couldn't go back to New York because I wasn't going to take him away from his dad.
Right.
So that's when I started doing voice work. I mean, I still did, short-term film and television things if they came along, but I wasn't willing to do another series or something that would prevent me from being a mom.
One of the TV movies you did, was it in 1978? That was I guess, towards the end of Maude. It
Right.
was Someone's Watching Me. And that led
did
to
that right after Mom. Yes.
Yeah. And that was where you met John Carpenter as the director on that. But you played the first, I think, gay character in a TV show like that that was ever been done.
Yes, I did.
Wow,
And
I didn't know
the wonderful thing about it was nobody made a big deal about it. Well, the scene was so beautifully written, that it was just, that's who she was. And but I am sort of proud of that.
Rightfully so.
Yeah, and then you go on and make The Fog, which many people consider one of the most classic horror films of all time. And it starts a whole genre thing for you that you start working with. I mean, of course, John Carpenter was your husband at the time, but you're also working with Wes Craven. You're working with George Romero. I mean, they don't call you the Scream Queen for nothing now, but were you just picking these roles because you knew these directors and you knew you liked the roles and the characters? It wasn't a conscious decision to do genre?
It was definitely not a conscious decision. It was what I was being offered. I mean, in the middle of that, I did Cannonball Run, and I did Back to School, and I did a science fiction film. I don't even remember the name of it, Time Traveler, that I took because it was shooting in Greece. And, I mean, it was what I was being offered, and because I liked them. But although I can't say that about Creepshow, I'm sure everybody has heard this story 50,000 times. But when they first sent me the screenplay to Creepshow, in the first place, I didn't know who George Romero was. Contrary to my husband, who was saying, "Are you kidding? You're going to turn down an opportunity to work with the master of horror?" But I read this screenplay and I thought, "Oh my God, I can't do this. This is gross. This is vile. This is that. This is," and
Billy is not a likable character at all.
He's a likable character.
Yeah,
but Tom Atkins had already been cast as the father in the interstitials, with Stephen King's son playing his son. And Tom was a very, very close friend. And I called Tom and I said, "Tommy, you're going to do this movie?" He said, "You don't get it. You don't get it. It's going to be a comic book. It's going to be very stylized. It's going to be very funny. You've got to do it." I go, "Okay, all right, I'll go do it." And of course, it's one of my favorite roles of all time.
And you got to work with Hal Holbrook in that, and
Hal Holbrook.
And
Yeah.
Chris Weaver. Yeah,
Yep.
it was great.
so
It was
how do you
great.
approach these different roles? How do you get into them? I mean, as far as your acting, you took a lot of different acting courses over the years with different famous acting teachers, but you found that some of them weren't exactly all to your liking. You finally found one that fit.
I quit them all in the beginning. I mean, when I first went to New York, I spent a month studying with Stella Adler. That wasn't right for me. Then I got accepted into Lee Strasberg's class. I didn't know what was going on there, and it was very political. If you weren't on Broadway, nobody would do a scene with you. So left there, and then I didn't do anything. Oh, I did spend some time with William Hickey, down at the HB Studios, and I did learn really the basics, because up until that point, I had only done musical comedy, and I had only worked with one director, really, and his whole modus operandi was pick up your cues. So the first scene I ever had to do for Bill Hickey was a dramatic scene from something called The Days and Nights of B.B. Fenstermaker. And when my scene partner finished speaking, I picked up my cue. I spoke my line right away. And when we finished doing it for the class, there was this dead silence. And then Bill said, sometimes in life, we think before we speak. And I thought, oh my God. But not in a musical.
No. There's more singing, less thinking.
Yes. And then I did end up with another teacher. I don't know how long I stayed, but named Warren Robertson, who was using a modification of Stanislavski and bioenergetics, which was a therapy based on Wilhelm Reich's work. And it involved breathing and getting in touch with yourself and getting in touch with your body and relaxation techniques and really just getting in touch with your, pardon the word, instrument. But it helped. But that really helped. And then when I came to LA, I continued to see a bioenergetic therapist and work on stuff that I thought was holding me back. And so that was sort of my trajectory. But
how was that applied with some of your roles? Has that been really helpful with some roles over top of others?
I find now, of course, I'm, many years older, but I think it hooked in at some point, maybe 20, 25 years ago. Just all my emotions they're just there, and they just connect with the words. I don't know how to say it. It sounds silly.
It's organic.
Organic, yeah.
I guess it's organic. And I don't ever attempt to make anything happen. I just, I do the work. I mean, I know I make my decisions about the character and what she's feeling and what she's thinking and all of that. And then I say the words, and lately I've just sort of been surprised, like, oh, that just came out. Oh, that's interesting.
The characters are channeling through you.
I think the bioenergetics, it's a way to know yourself, to understand what you've been through and how it's affected you. I'm not doing the therapy approach any.
I've got one short story that I wanted to share with you. So rarely in life do we get a chance to explain to people how much something that they worked on did with them. But I'm gonna go back to 1986. I'm 6 years old. It's family movie night, and on Friday nights in the 80s, my family would get together. We'd rent a VHS tape from the local video store, which was such a novelty and ritual. And, we picked up The Fog, brought it home, and turned it on. And, 6 years old, you're kind of like, well, should kids see horror in this day and age? It's very different in the 80s. In fact, it's hard for younger generations to understand like how endemic horror and sci-fi was back then. Like I had a Freddy Krueger lunchbox. Um, like, like horror was the thing. And you
Get
see
your claws into that sandwich.
The Fog was the first horror film I ever saw, and from those first beats of John Houseman, man, could he tell a campfire story. It set the entire tone for that movie in a minute and sent chills right down my spine. And that whole movie is such a masterful way to demonstrate how to properly build tension and momentum. Because when the big bad finally reveals itself, it's not until like the last like 10, 15 minutes of the movie. The whole time it's just building and building and building. And your character, Stevie Wayne there, you've played, I think now almost 3 or 4 times that same kind of role of the night bird, that voice on the mic in the night. That movie though, in particular, I'll never forget sitting on my great grandmother's lap, who sadly we lost to Alzheimer's, which is why it's relevant here. But I'll never forget the first time I saw that movie, first horror movie ever, and how much it really meant to me, and the time that I shared with my great grandmother.
Wow, that's nice. It's nice to hear, when we're doing it, and certainly when I was doing things back in the early 80s. I mean, you never think about the future. You never think about the effect it's going to have on people. I mean, I just never thought about it, and so it's just nice to hear.
Thank you. I've been in love with horror ever since. In talking about,
I've got one for you to watch. It's not The Fog. It's not anything like that. But you've probably never seen it because it just got a very limited release here. But it's just very funny. If you get a chance to see The Convent, directed by Mike Men. There's a bunch of convent movies, but this is the one with me. But it's just hysterically funny. It's a horror film.
Yeah. Horror films that you can laugh with too are just so great. I mean, so many releases of different emotions during the film.
Yeah. And then there's another, I did a short film, I think it was back in 2012, I'm not sure, that in my mind it's a short film called Alice Jacobs is Dead. It's after the zombie apocalypse. But I always felt that the character I was playing, that it was a treatise on Alzheimer's.
Oh.
I don't want to give the whole thing away, but maybe I should.
2009.
Is 2009? Alice Jacobs is Dead. I think it's on, maybe it's on Shudder or one of those, something that starts with an A. I can't remember, streaming service. It's after the zombie. It's after the zombie virus has desecrated the country. It takes place in San Francisco, if I remember correctly. And my husband is a scientist who is developing a cure for the virus, but I have been infected, and I know I'm going to turn eventually. And it just seemed to me that someone in the early stages of Alzheimer's who recognizes that their they're losing their ability to find words. They're losing their ability to remember things. I just thought that's this woman. I mean, she knows this is coming. There's nothing that's going to reverse it. There's nothing that's going to stop it. And this is the fear that she's living with.
I have to see that now.
Yeah, now I have to see that too.
Scariest thing. That's the scariest thing about Alzheimer's is it takes you away before it takes you away. It takes everything you ever were and everything that you ever will be. And the parallels on that and the horror aspect of it. I mean, there's horror involved in Alzheimer's disease, and to actually give it that kind of metaphorical treatment sounds really cool. I'm definitely going to have to look that up. So Alice Jacobs is dead.
Yeah.
Alice Jacobs is dead. It's just a 22-minute short. It won a lot of festival awards and everything. But
yeah. Do you enjoy doing shorts?
I just did. Did I do two? This last year, I did one. I just did two, I guess. And yeah, for me, it doesn't matter the length. It matters the words.
Yeah.
It matters the words. I'm not a big movie buff anyway. I don't.
That's ironic.
You make the donuts, you don't eat the donuts.
Yep, that's fair.
That's right. It's certainly not a horror movie buff. I don't see horror if I can help it. I don't see horror. But even at home, I mean, I'd rather watch, an hour series. I watch a lot of international series on MHZ Choice. I'd rather watch 4 hours of a series than an hour and a half movie. I don't know why, but
well, you've been dealing with that all your life. I mean, you're a very intelligent person. You're very interested in the world, interested in the arts, interested in literature, interested in people, and all of these things and this great thinking that's going on. And yet people have this other image of you that couldn't be further from who you actually are.
If you asked me who I was, I would say I'm a mother. I mean, that's the most important to me.
Yep.
And continues to be, even though my two youngest are 26. But
always your babies.
They're my babies. And now I have my sister's little girls and my sister's daughter's children, so I'm a great aunt. And but no, I'm an actress who does whatever she can do. A lot of what I do these days when I'm not on film or on camera is I do voiceovers. I do video captioning for the blind.
Oh, cool.
Oh, no way.
Television and movies, so that if you're watching TV and you put your SAP channel on and you're watching SWAT, let's say, or CSI or Nova or a bunch of stuff on Roku, in between the actor's dialogue, you'll hear my voice or someone's voice saying, let me think, he turns to Max and picks up the gun, or something like describing what's going on. She looks at him with a furrowed brow. The assailant drops the knife. Whatever.
That's fantastic. But you're doing a lot of voice work these days. I mean, you're a Catwoman. One of the reasons you're here with us, we wanted to bring you in, is because you're the overseer in Fallout 76. How is it different portraying these voice characters than it was, say, the way you approach a stage role or a film role? How are they different, or are they similar in some ways?
Well, you're much more, or I am, no, all of us are, I think, much more dependent on a director. For instance, when we did Catwoman or when we did Batman, we're all seated in a room we have our scripts in front of us, which just have the words. They don't have the storyboards. And so we're saying our lines, and then our voice director in the situation of Batman was Andrea Romano. For instance, there's a scene where I'm running across the roof of a building and I jump down to the ground. So run, land. And Andrea pipes up and says, Adrienne, it's a 10-story building. It's not just a 2-story building.
That's
okay,
a different oomph.
so I got, you know. But with a lot of it, especially with video games, because I have no idea what's going on. You know, so again, the director is there saying, okay, you've walked into the room. This is how you feel about that person, blah, 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 blah. Or you make your own choices if there is no director, if it's, you know, a cartoon or something.
Sometimes just an engineer.
You have to know where you're coming from, who you're talking to, where you're going, and that's a little different on film because you've got your other actors working with. I got hired to do a Family Guy, and they told me to play a 90-year-old French maid, and they told me I was going to have a sex scene with Carl Reiner. Oh boy, I'm going to have a sex scene with Carl Reiner. Well, I show up and it's just me in the booth, you know.
So you've got to fantasize about Carl Reiner.
Making kissing sounds, you know. Now, if it had been an anime, a live action, Carl would have been there, and who knows what?
Right.
So, and then of course, then there's the video games where it's motion capture, like I did Dr. I can't remember her name in Halo 4, Dr.
Oh yeah, that was yep.
And that was motion capture. I think that was the first full body motion capture I'd ever done. Therein, you do have to memorize the lines, and you put the bodysuit on, which has all the little sensors on it, and they are videoing your body movements. And so it's a different thing. You're not just reading the script in front of you. So that's how some of the ways that I think that the mediums differ.
Do you get a chance to play when it comes to voice roles that you feel physically you would never get a chance to play if it was something live action?
Oh yes, definitely. I just did a year or two ago, Curious George Go West, and I played somebody's grandmother, you know, and she was, you know, sort of round-faced, round-bodied.
Ginny's mother. Ginny's mother, yeah.
Is that who it was?
Yeah, whoever Ginny was, you were Ginny's mother.
Yes, Ginny's mother, yes. And you know, so she has a different voice than Hera in God of War, and
it could be funny if you exchanged them. Just saying.
But I was really happy to work on Fallout 76. And then I found out later it was John Carpenter, one of John's favorite video games. So.
Yeah. I was shocked when I heard that. He was talking about it. He's like, yeah, I stream it, love playing it. I was like, wow, that's amazing.
So every time I went in to do you know, more work on it, I'd call John or tell Cody to tell his dad, you know, hey, there's new stuff coming. Yeah.
It seems to me that you guys have kept a really good relationship over the years, and your work dovetailing together as it had with your legacies. That's a pretty cool thing. Yes,
I'm very pleased that we've remained friends, and you know, I just think. Well, as everybody else does, he's a brilliant director. He's just, and his music. I don't know if either of you guys saw the tour.
Yes.
You know, I was blown away. It was,
Well, your
and
music too.
I was on my way. I was on my way to the friends and family, performance, thinking, "Oh God, an hour and a half of electronic music. I wish John had sing. I wish John had sing. Blah blah blah." And then I got there, and with the video and the way they had put it together, boy, it was exciting.
Yeah, there's he did a music video not too long ago for the re-release of the Christine soundtrack. And in the music video, if anybody gets a chance to see it on YouTube, highly recommend, but it's John in the car and it's the beautiful, ominous synth and it's chasing this girl through the street and, the car creeps up on her. But that sound of the 80s era is just, it still goes on. And people are rediscovering it now where synth music has come back in a big way. For younger generations are listening to like new retro synth wave, they're calling it now.
Yes, yeah.
It's so cool that stuff is still popular.
Now, that's not the kind of music that you do, though. I mean, you still go out. Do you still do your cabaret? Do you still go out and perform musically?
I haven't, primarily because up until I did Pippin, I was writing. I don't know when. Well, no, and all during the pandemic. I went over to New Zealand. I was able to do Cowboy Bebop, which was great. I mean, it was cool. A joy to go to New Zealand during the pandemic. But I spent most of that year and a half working on the Grease book. I don't know if I'll ever sing again. I don't know.
Well, you had a love-hate relationship with the singing. I mean, it put you on the map with your musicals when you started, and then doing Grease and Fiddler, and eventually so many places that you sang along the way. But did you ever really get comfortable with it?
I don't love musical comedy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not the kind of material I sing for myself. And yet I never had a persona that was identified with a type of music. So when I did do my act, I just picked songs that I liked, but
why not?
I don't think of myself as a singer. I think of myself as an actor. And by the same token, I wrote, 3 vampire novels and then the memoir and then the Grease book, but I don't think of myself as a writer.
Vampires of Hollywood. Is that ever going to come to the screen?
The second novel in the series, which is called Love Bites.
Yeah.
We have a pilot script, and we're just waiting now for the writers' strike to end before we can go in and pitch. We wrote it as a screenplay. We got a couple of offers that weren't right, and then someone said, this should really be a series. There's a lot of vampire stuff on the air right now, so it might be a while, but you might see Love Bites.
I mean, it's cool. Vampires and some inside Hollywood baseball going on there, right?
It's me. I mean, it's what I know about my industry. She's a 450-year-old Armenian vampire who happens to be the head of a movie studio, and also the head of a clan of vampires of Hollywood, which includes all the A-list actors like Orson Welles and Charlie Chaplin and
awesome.
Robert Downey Jr. And somebody's killing them off in the first book, Vampires of Hollywood. Someone's killing them off. In the second one, somebody is trying to take over her studio and killing the people around her. And she hooks up with the hunky Beverly Hills detective. And so they're sort of fun and satiric. No, they're not satirical. Fantasy and vampire-y, and it just what came out, you know.
I'm looking forward to it. I've really enjoyed your first book, the autobiography. I thought it was fantastic, and you really take people inside of your thoughts. I mean, you've been doing journals since you were a young girl.
I did. I started writing when I was 12. I think I started keeping a diary, and so when time came to write the memoir, I was able to go back, and it's a good thing because I don't remember anything about my career. You know, all I remember is the people I was dating, or you know, things like that. But I did have that as a reference.
You know, looking at so some of the shows that you've stayed with the longest, when you look at your role as Ruthie in Carnival, or your work on General Hospital. I mean, you, as particularly General Hospital, that was 10 years. What was it about those shows that you really just didn't want to stop doing and just love so much?
You know what? I was not on General Hospital for 10 years. I just did it
off and on.
Oh, I see. Off and on for, yeah.
Yeah, I just did it. I think it was 6 months or 9 months. Carnival. Oh, I would
missed
have
that
done
show
Carnival for the rest of my life.
I am so upset that they ended it when they ended it. It was so delicious, and then 2 seasons. It should have gone for more. That was one I think one of the biggest crimes HBO ever committed by ending that series. That broke my heart.
Yes, and had they gone on another season, I think it would have been a huge success because it was just finding its crossover audience. You know, but it was an expensive show to produce, and I think there were a lot of politics involved. And but at least we got 2 years. It was, you know, one of my.
It was sumptuous.
The greatest job in the world. It was just. She was an incredible character. I loved everything about it. Just everything about it.
What would you say your favorite character of all time is that you've played? And is there a bucket list kind of character that you really would love to play? Something that nobody has thought of you for, but you would be perfect for?
Well, I do love Billy. I mean, you know, in Creepshow.
Yeah.
I love Billy. I love Maggie. I love Stevie Wayne. Those are probably, and Ruthie, of course, in Carnival. Those are probably my 4 top favorites that I can think of right now. I've never thought in terms of bucket lists. I don't know. I mean, years ago, I used to say, "Oh, I love the role that Jane Fonda did in Clute, and Joanne Woodward did in Three Faces of Eve." But I'm way past being able to do those. I don't. It'd be great to have another role where I pick up an M16 and blow away bad guys, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Could you see yourself sinking your teeth into Afsana Moore from Vampires of Hollywood?
I would love to, but I'm a little too old to play Afsana now. But there is another character in Love Bites that I could play. We'll see.
You know, with and I've seen some other interviews and articles where you talk about Billy from Creepshow so much. That character is such a polar opposite for you in terms of just her being so completely unfiltered.
She's nasty.
And so is it kind of cathartic to just do something so completely opposite, just in a fun way? Like, I'm just gonna play this mean person and it's gonna be fun.
I don't remember. I mean, I don't even know if I thought of her as a mean person. One of the things that makes a character like that work. You don't set out to play.
No.
You don't set out to play bitch. You know,
Yep.
you have to understand what it is that drives her.
You have your reasons
or
to
else-
be who you are. Yeah.
Yeah. It was incredibly
Billy is the
disappointing.
hero of that story to Billy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, she was just incredibly disappointed with her life and her husband and you know, her position in the world of academia, and it just made her bitter and made him, you know, just a fool in her eyes, or just it wasn't the way it was supposed to be, you know, when she
Right.
buried him. It wasn't the way it was supposed to be.
There is, I think one of the things that you did masterfully with her character is, despite all of that, she's very complex in terms of the scenario that Henry concocts to, you know, get you to go take a look at what's inside the crate. There was some real empathy that Billy had for, you know, this character. It was one of the girls that Henry said, "Oh, you know, this girl is all upset," and you're like, "Oh my God!" You actually want to
Very
go
concerned. Yeah, she was very concerned.
in an interesting way. So there was some nice complexity there. You're not just evil.
Oh,
And it wasn't like evil either. It was just, like you said, there's frustration, there's anger.
Yeah,
We
yep.
all have that. It's very relatable. But to be able to see that there's also, and that's what made it an interesting thing, because if you were just straight across the board, mean and nasty, everybody would have been rooting for Al Holbrook right from the very beginning. But they made it so, and you made it so, that we actually started to care what happened to you. Even if you rubbed us the wrong way at the beginning, because you showed these other sides of yourself, this human side of yourself, the kindness that was in there, everybody's suddenly like, no, don't do that, you know?
oh, I'm going to have to go back and watch this movie.
It's a great, really great performance, and the creature work that Ramiro did. Good Lord, that abominable snowman creature was just really terrifying to look like. I remember it scared the hell out of me when I was a kid.
It was a great takeoff on the old EC horror comics of the 50s. And that was what they were really going for with that. And in a lot of those instances, I think Billy was very much a character directly out of those old comics, because you'd have that dramatic flair and the anger and the flare up, and then the ask and you know, the gasp and things of that sort. It was the whole thing was kind of delicious.
Well, I'm glad you guys liked it, and I'm glad I got to do it.
So you weren't always
I'm
sure
glad
about some of these films, right? You weren't sure, and then suddenly they'd get great reviews.
Well, there were a couple that I took that I didn't take them because I thought they were going to be great. I took them because, well, if you read the book, you know.
Yeah.
I took them because they were filming in Moscow, or
Right.
They were, you know, or because I needed to put a termite tent on my house.
And some of these films, they also became cult classics. Particularly, you know, Swamp Thing is such an underground cult classic movie that people really appreciate now. Particularly looking back on that was a fantastic movie. We're talking about going early comic book movies that were very unusual for the time.
And you did a film that had one of the best titles ever, in Cannibal Women in the Avocado Jungle of Death.
And one of the reasons I did that film is because the Writers Guild was on strike, and that film production company signed an agreement with the Writers Guild that they would abide by whatever the Writers Guild finally settled on. So we were the only movie that was shooting, and I mean, it's basically Heart of Darkness, you know, apocalypse. And I just thought it was very, very witty. So
It's a hilarious title. I'll have to check it out. Some movies, you look at the title and you're like, yeah, gotta watch it. Gotta watch it.
Well, Cannibal Women, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess I saw it when it first came out. I don't remember it at all, but I did take it because I thought the script was very witty. And I think it was written under a pseudonym by the writer who went on to do Pretty Women. I'd have to do a little research on that.
I want to see the
J.D.
sequel
Long-
to the two of them, Pretty Women in the Avocado Jungle of Death.
Well, he wrote a funny script for Cannibal Women in the Avocado Jungle of Death. He did.
And more
I'm going
recent.
to have to try pretty soon, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think if someone's going to go out and watch one of your films right now, it's probably best they should go see Alice Jacobs is Dead. Maybe check out something like Convent. And was that what it was? Was
The Convent.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have two. Let's see, two or three. I have the short that is just come out and is making the festival circuit is called Oddities, and there's a bit of Billy in that character, and then another one called Early Retirement, which just won some awards at a film festival here in LA, and well, if they want to go to On Demand, they can see the 911 I did earlier this week.
Yep.
Well, one of these days. Good. Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say I'm doing a recurring character for Harlan Coben in a new that he's going to have on Amazon. I think it'll drop later this year, called Harlan Coben's Shelter. And I just did another recurring character on a series from J.J. Abrams that I guess I shouldn't talk about too much. But
well, that's very cool. It's under the NDA. It's called NDA.
NDA, yes.
Well, this has been a real pleasure, and I'm honored to have at least shared one title with you in Fallout 76. One of these days would find it an honor to actually work with you, but I know even people you've known since childhood and have worked several films together, you never met them once on set because you guys end up in different things. So we'll see what the future holds.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much for helping us raise funds here today for Alzheimer's Association.
I hope you raise a lot of money.
Yeah, we're now at, in total, since last year, $42,682.02 raised for Alzheimer's research.
Great. Fantastic. All right.
Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you all for tuning in, everybody.
Thank you, Adrienne.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ken.
Bye-bye.